Go check it out now.
You! Get out of the buggy! Keep your hands up!
Cobra Main, this is Cobra 7. We got one coming in.
Nobody even knows that you're here.
Where is he? Where's that old fuckman?
I know you froze your ass off. It doesn't have to be that way tonight.
Deploying drone. Time now. How copy?
Roger that. Copy. Attempt northwest.
Just gonna put them right
in line.
yeah.
This is my bird.
After 11 and a half hours, Brent has reached the extraction point.
Jared!
Because Brent was unable to sleep while in captivity, he has now been awake for over 35 hours. He successfully evaded over 2.5 miles in just over 11 and a half hours. He also climbed about 2,800 feet during his evasion.
Cheers, bud.
Yeah, cheers, man. Outstanding. Because Brent finished with just over 12 hours remaining, everyone gets to go back to my place to get some rest for the next event. Jared is up next, and because Brent actually made it up to the extraction point, not only does Jared have to make it, but he also has to beat Brent's time of 11 and a half hours. All right, grunts, welcome to the live Q&A after party for episode 5 of SERE Challenge Season 2. Brent has made it up to the extraction point in 11 and a half hours, but we are not done yet. We're still going to have to throw Jared into the ringer. So let me bring in everybody. Cheers, gentlemen. All right.
All right.
All right, I got dibs on first question. So, Brent, 35 hours awake, tired, cold, hungry, exhausted. What else we got? 2,800 feet of total elevation. So, how did it feel getting up to the extraction point, making that final sprint and making it?
Awesome. I got to tell you guys that ending. Oh my God. I mean, the enemy, Jared, was between me and the endpoint. Like the only way, and I knew it too, the only way I could get there was to stealthily move past him undetected to get to a point where I could make a beeline and straight all out sprint for it. But I knew he was between me and there. And, you know, I knew he was between me and the endpoint, but I didn't know where. So, you want to talk about butthole factor? It was absolutely, excuse me, it was absolutely nerve wracking. And as I got closer and closer to the actual endpoint and vehicle, the scouts are over there, Jared's over there, everybody's there, and I'm, the sun's down, I can barely see. And I'm seeing silhouettes of people, and I'm like, I don't know who's who, and I'm running. So it was absolutely nerve-wracking. I was waiting for, every possibility. Jared just jumping out of the bushes and all of a sudden just grabbing me, and then it's over. Come all that way and go home empty-handed. But I made it there, and, couldn't have been more ecstatic.
Yeah, so what's funny is you had 4 cameras pointed at you when you were working your way, when you were making that final sprint, which was about 150 meters long, mostly uphill. All the cameras were on you except for Jared's. So, Jared, you were kind of looking out toward the west. Did you hear anything at all behind you? I mean, I know we were kind of walking around, but did anything tip you off hanging out over there in your OP?
So I was down in the Manzanitas there. Excuse me. So after it got dark, or just after it got dark, I was able to hear Brent not even 50 meters out in front of me. And it sounded like he was moving right in towards my direction, like straight in at me. So my mistake was that I stayed put. And by the time I realized I could hear him, I was able to hear him for 45 minutes coming across there. And I was just trying to sit there and listen and observe. And by the time I realized where he was at that point, he had already gotten past me to the east side over into the clearing area and then made his sprint up through there. I was kind of stuck into those Manzanitas. I kind of got myself into an area where I couldn't get out very stealthily. If I had moved from that point, I would have been making all kinds of noise, and he would have heard me. So I got myself stuck in there, and that was my mistake. If I had not gotten in there so far, it might have been a little different. The other thing I was trying to do at that point is he was so close, and we were so close to each other. I was trying to get my MVGs, the PVS-14, out of my pouch. And it's dark now, and all the ambient noise is gone. Everything is silent. And I'm trying to pull the pouch, the closure on the pouch with the Velcro. And every time I would pull it, it would rip a little bit. That Velcro would rip a little bit, and it sounded like it was echoing through the whole valley. So at that point, he had gotten past me. And by the time I was able to get out of that area, he had already made it out into the clearing and then was heading up to the end point there.
All right, so that's a good point. We're going to see this in follow-on episodes about sound. So with the gulches and all the terrain features and stuff, you'll hear, like, I didn't pick anything up on your camera. That's why I asked you. So Brent actually moved super stealthy there. He had like pretty much grass and dirt to deal with, so he was fortunate there. But yeah, out there in that terrain, you'll hear stuff that sounds like it's in one direction, and it's almost like an echo effect, even off those Manzanitas. So that's pretty crazy. But Jared, you can take this question. Did you get to use the night vision?
So no, that was what I was getting to with trying to pull it out of my pouch. The Velcro to me just sounded like it was so damn loud, and I didn't want to continue to try to get it out and have him hear that Velcro rip, and then have him hear my exact location and then just sprint away from there at that point. So no, I did not use them. I was attempting to, but I was afraid of making noise at that point because we were so close. I mean, if it had been light, we would have been able to see each other.
Yeah, and so Brent could probably back me up on this, but as a grunt who sat through many dusks and dawns, night vision is almost useless at that time when Brent was coming up. Pretty much once he started his sprint, it might have been helpful if you were looking that way, but because you were looking almost at the sunset, your nods would have kind of been useless at that point anyway. So yeah, just to throw that out there for people. It's kind of a shame we didn't get to show them off, but it is what it is. All right, so I see some questions flying in there. So I told people up front, any members get priority on questions. We'll see if any of those guys come in here yet. But I'll be looking through the questions. So, Brent, let's go back to the beginning of this episode. We started off with the drone overhead. So we've discussed it before, how effective a drone is. But every time it shows up in these episodes, you guys do put your heads down. So what does that do to you in terms of movement and like your mental state?
Oh, it's so you can hear it like in the episode, you can hear the drone overhead. So it's like when it's up in the air, it's like it's flying around and it makes you hunker down. This episode, you hear me at one point say, "Oh, there's that little pesky fucker," or whatever it was I said, because I'd actually finally got eyes on it. And when I saw it, it was pretty high up in the air, and it was to my west, I believe. So like once I actually got eyes on the drone, it gave me a little bit more peace of mind that I could start moving again. So I started moving at that point. But before I actually got eyes on and all I could do was hear it, I wasn't moving. I was hunkering down in those manzanitas, trying to, make sure I had enough concealment so they couldn't see me.
All right, cool. So if you guys noticed, Stoker's back. He's been AWOL for a little bit, doing his own thing, maybe looking for balloons out there. So you being the returning champ and being on the hunting side, do you have some notes on Brent's go around?
Well, I think I don't know if it got caught on what you shared or not in all the episodes, but you and I talked quite a bit during that day and the next day. Like everything that Brent did was very intentional. It was, he had a game plan and he executed it just extremely well. Getting away from the X being his first priority, getting rid of the rest of the restraints and getting, some sort of camouflage on his body and using some first aid supplies as shit paper. You got to do what you got to do. And then just kept moving forward. And he knew his situational awareness was on point. So he knew where he was in relationship to where he started and where he was trying to go. And he used the terrain to his advantage as well as the nighttime ops and being able to understand his, left and right lateral limits, so to speak, and just being able to utilize the pieces of terrain where he could to increase some speed, and cutting across some of those linear danger areas like he did. And then, again, using his noise and light discipline to his advantage. Outstanding job.
Yeah, I wish I could have calculated y'all's elevation changes and all that, like I did for this one, but that's just how it goes, improving things. So, you and I had the trackers, the screens, and we could see exactly what these guys were doing. Brent kind of took up a similar route that Coleman tried to go before he got stopped. So I know you took kind of like you kind of flanked the whole AO almost when you did it. So looking at Brent's route, and I know you've seen more of the footage and the tracker and stuff. What do you think about the route Brent was forced to take versus yours when you were a survivor?
Yeah, I think, it's two different techniques. Like I dogleg my way in as best as I could. And I think for the most part, Brent really tried to stay as close to the azimuth that he was trying to stay on it, and knowing, again, kind of where that endpoint was going to be, at least in relationship to what he could see, which is not much because of the man's needed. But I don't think that there's any, necessarily pro or con. It's just two different TTPs that each one of us utilized. And at the end, they both worked. They were both effective. So much kudos to my 0331.
Yeah, that's the second Marine to win this. So, Army guys, if you're out there, we need somebody to man the fuck up, or maybe we get a Coast Guard dude out there.
Or maybe the Navy guy will win on the second half.
Yeah, we'll see. So
we'll see.
Going back to the drone and harassment, Brent, a lot of people don't realize, you got a drone overhead, you got quads rolling around the AO, you've got scouts walking around. So talk about like just, how that feels out there, because you're getting very limited sit reps. So what's going through your mind when you got all this activity around you?
Yeah. So I think you specified in the rules that like the scouts couldn't actually get anybody out, that it had to be the hunter, but the scouts could report to the hunter. But when I was actually doing that, man, it felt like everybody was against me. Like, trust nobody. Every sound out there is enemy. And the closer I got to the endpoint, the more that rang true. And in this last episode, it has me like less than 200 meters from the endpoint, and then I hear a quad roll up to where I'm headed, and then all of a sudden the engine cuts off. Right. Well, at one point it sounded like it was coming down the little game trail I was on. That's why all of a sudden I turned around real quick and started to run back, because I literally thought it sounded like, how the sound was echoing, that quad was actually coming down my trail for a minute. And then I kind of ran back a little bit, jumped in the more vegetation, and I realized it doesn't sound like it's coming down this trail now. And then all of a sudden the engine stops, like right up in front of where I'm heading. And I'm like, great. Quad stops, dudes are jumping off. What I had thought was Jared used his relocation perk, and now he's sitting right there, right in front of me, between me and the endpoint. And at that point, it was like, well, I was going northeast, but that ain't going to fucking work. Now I'm going to have to go west to get, around him. And so that's how that all came into play.
Yeah. So I don't ever go into detail about the vehicles, but there's at least 4 out there rolling around with different purposes. So if you count the drones, that makes 6. And then if you count personnel, you got 8 possible bad guys out there on foot in the area. So Jared, were you thinking about relocating at all until or before this very end?
Well, excuse me, I had relocated earlier in the day, probably around 2-3 o'clock. And so at the time I kind of felt that my relocation was wasted. But it did get me closer to Brent, because at that time, before my relocation, I thought I was really far behind him. And in actuality, I wasn't, but it did put me closer. So after my relocation is when I went on foot up to the north side of the AO, or north central side of the AO. And I kind of set up over there for a little while on a hill overlooking that entire valley where Brent was. And I probably sat there for a half hour, 45 minutes. And then I made my way over to where the extraction point was after I got an intel update, because he was basically directly south of me, about 500 meters. So I knew if I went over to to pretty much where the end point was. It was going to get me a lot closer to him. Once I got over to the end point, it was probably an hour or so later is when we used the drone. And the drone footage didn't do anything. It harassed Brent a little bit, made him lay low. But after the drone, and we kind of milled around there for a little while, did some housekeeping stuff. I then went south of the extraction point and set up my LPOP, and I sat there for probably 45 minutes to an hour before I heard Brent coming up through the bush. And like I said, it sounded like whenever I first started hearing him for probably the first 20 minutes, it sounded like he was moving straight towards me. And that's why I ended up just staying where I was at, because I thought he was going to basically run right into me at that point.
Yeah, that's kind of the name of the game. You go off the intel, and it's up to you to decide what to do, and hopefully it works out for you. So here's a question for us. Could the hunter have called for scouts to harass and try to funnel Brent? Yeah. Initially, I had it to where that was one of the hourly perks, and then we just kind of told them they could do whatever they wanted with them. So, Jared, did you pretty much relied on the intel updates, which I think we talked about in other live chats, like how crucial that is. But what do you think was missing in perks you could have gotten?
Like as I said before, and Brent said it as well, the intel updates were where it was at. You had a choice of an intel update or moving the scouts around. You couldn't do both. So I relied very heavily on just the intel updates. I could have at that point maybe had the scouts go just to the east of me and set up along that line and put a perimeter line right there and kind of help push Brent towards me a little bit. But by that point, it was getting, I had already had my last intel update, and my next perk wasn't coming for another hour or so. So I wasn't going to get that perk in the time frame that I needed it.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. Between the last two seasons, where we're at so far, I'm already trying to change them up and make them more interesting, and give the hunter a little bit more of an edge. So that's what where Stoker comes in. I'll send him stuff I'm thinking about, bounce stuff off of him. He'll send me his ideas, and that helps pretty big. So let's see, I got a question, but let's get to this one. So did either of you focus on scent and or pick up on any stank?
Stank.
I left some scent for Jared early on in the games, hoping that he would find that.
Yeah, you ruined my medical gauze, the German stuff. Yeah, I didn't think. I mean, all I can think of is if you're out there, we can direct this to Stoker too. If somebody's got a fire, you'll smell that for sure. But like body odor and stuff, I think you'd have to be like when Brent was coming up at the end. I believe the wind was coming easterly, so that wouldn't have affected Brent getting by Jared. But if the wind would have been going the other way, and Jared's been out there for 11 hours, if he would have stopped, maybe. But that's hard to say. But so that goes into what I was going to ask Stoker. So going out there to find Coleman, well, that was one of the number one things that brought you down to that spot, right?
Yeah, well, if I recall, I knew where I was at, and I knew the general direction of where Coleman was at. But you're thinking, I didn't have an azimuth. I knew he was in this general direction, if you will. And so moving a little bit closer, probably within 300 yards, it was the light that gave it away first from the fire. and I could start to smell it a little bit with the terrain and some of the wind. Like even a fire, you can if you know what you're doing, you can manage a stealth fire. But certainly, once I found his campsite, it was just a matter of being methodical to do some searching around before we found him taking a nap.
All right. So with that, Brent, you specifically asked about time versus all the skills. And if people haven't seen the first season, we basically wanted to make sure we demonstrated like basic survival skills and kind of graded the contestants. And so that was also going to be used as a tiebreaker later. But this time, we didn't want to force anybody to do anything. We wanted it to be natural. So if you stayed out there at night, you would have to use whatever survival skill you needed to. Like if it's 20 degrees at night again, you might need to do a shelter and maybe some kind of tactical fire. So Brent, you were pretty much looking at racing for time once you found that out, but I'm sure people would be curious to hear like what your plan would be if you did an overnight, or at least you got into like half the night or something.
Yeah, it was, I don't think any of the footage of me talking about that actually made it into the series. But multiple times I was, under the impression that it wasn't, if I was going to be out overnight, it was when. And many times throughout the challenge, I was looking for good, feasible areas to build like a stealth hide and build a stealth fire because I thought for sure that I was going to have to do all that stuff. And plus, I had watched the shit out of the season 1, and I had thought that you had got serious brownie points for doing all that stuff too. So, it was, in my mind, it was like, hey, I'm going to do this stuff. Like I have to. One, I don't have any type of winter clothing on, and that temperature is going to get down into the possible teens again. So it's like not a question of if, it was when. And it wasn't till many hours into the challenge that I think I finally got an intel update on like how far the extraction point actually was for me. And it was a lot closer than I ever thought that I was supposed to be. And at that point I was like, well shit, if I'm that close, what's the deal with the the campsite and the fire? Like if it comes down to a tie, is it is this time trump doing all these survival tasks and all this other stuff? And then you had told me like, yeah, it's time is more important than those the other things. And then once I knew that, I was like, well, fuck this. I'm going for the win, man. I'm I think 1,000 meters at that time away from the endpoint. It's like, no, I'm not geared up to weather this temperature and me building a fire, which I would have to probably do in those conditions. Risk me getting detected by the enemy, and the enemy's getting hourly updates. So it's like there was just more risk in doing all that, as opposed to just saying fuck it and pushing on through and then trying to get the fastest time possible. Muted.
What kind of shelter would you have tried to do if you had to overnight it? Some kind of primitive dig in the ground, leaves, or would you try to do some kind of frame?
So I had found this little, I think it was a dry creek bed. I'd have to go back and watch the video. But inside this, it was almost like a little trench. And inside there were a lot of like pine needles and stuff like that. So when I found it, I was like, man, this is good. This is a nice location. I'm in the defilade, right? So if I do have to build a fire, I can dig it down, maybe make like a Dakota fire hole. And, it puts me below the rest of the surface and conceals me more. And then I remember I had a stealth blanket. I don't think I had a poncho, but there was several logs around. So I was going to make like a roof and put vegetation on top of it. And then, have try to dig something like a Dakota fire hole and be in that trench. And that's what I was looking at. And that's subsequently when I was in that position is when I got the intel from you that, time essentially trumped all those survival tasks. So at that point I was like, well, fuck yeah, throwing that idea out the window. I'm going for the win now.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
That might be an idea for one of the Infantryman's Guide videos. How you would do some stealthy non-grunt stuff, because grunts would have like bonfires out there. So here's a question for you. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there's somebody up there in the top right corner that just did a recent video about going out there and making those types of locations.
That's right. All right, so here's a question for you. See, I like this. I watch it all alone up here in my upper dungeon, drinking beer and taking notes and stressing about it. You actually sit down with your family and make it an event. Like, I don't see you in the chat. We don't really see you in the Signal group. So it sounds like you actually make it like a show at home. So this guy's asking, how did your kids react to watching Dad get captured on episode 1? And any funny reactions from the kids on any of this? I'm curious about this too.
Yeah, well, both of my kids are in elementary school, so they're little tykes, and they're watching this stuff, and unfortunately, they ask a lot of questions, and me, I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat, like watching, like, shut the fuck up, trying to watch the show. So, but they're watching and like, oh my gosh, Daddy's captured, oh, what are they doing to you, Dad? That kind of stuff. So it's funny. They're asking these questions and I'm over there like, shut up, can't hear, be quiet. Talk to you afterwards.
Hold all questions till the end. I get that with my youngins. I've never seen the Harry Potter movies and I've been forced to watch them a bunch, and I still don't know what the hell's going on because I'm busy answering questions that I don't even know how to give an answer because I haven't watched the damn movie. Why are they doing this? I'm just like, all right, I give up. That's pretty cool though. So they weren't like stressed out about you getting shot or anything like that, or did you give them a safety brief? Like, Daddy's gonna be okay.
I think they're fine because they're watching it knowing that it happened in the past, and there I am still sitting on the couch. So they know I'm not shot.
You never know, man. Kids have funny imaginations. All right, I saw. Oh, here we go. So this is one of our sponsors in this one. So Winter Warfare. He was, I think he was a sponsor in this last one too. So we gave him 2 shots, but he's saying it would be interesting to hear Jared's thoughts from the extraction point. If it would be better to make more noise hunting versus LPOP quiet to keep Brent pinned down overnight. So maybe like a screening operation to keep Brent from coming up there.
Yeah, I think utilizing the scouts for that would have been optimal. Myself, I would not have wanted to make any noise. I would have wanted to maintain my stealth and being quiet. But for sure, I think having the scouts making the noise and the screening and helping to push and direct Brent into the area that I needed them to go to come more towards me, I think that would have been super beneficial. And it just didn't work out that way. I did think about that earlier in the day, but at that point in the process, this time of day, I didn't think about it at that point.
Yeah, so full disclosure here, this is I keep saying I'm just a grunt with some cameras and a lot of awesome help with me. So a lot of the stuff you guys are wondering about is on me. So I give these guys a full brief when they show up. I actually send them a ton of emails before they even come out there. But I really try to put out just enough information so they know what they can get away with and, like their support and everything. And so I think this time I did better with giving them like their perks up front rather than making them find a card in their kit and figure it out later. But there was still some things that were unclear that Stoker and I would clear up on the ground, and I hope it didn't affect you guys. But it's all just like lessons learned, So I just know to hammer some stuff home in my brief, like what you guys can actually do on the ground. And so one of those is, Jared, you reminded me of it, like being able to push the scouts out. So, see, I'm just finishing up episode 9, so I have some of that stuff in my head. But, I think I could have done better at letting Jared know that he could have pushed the scouts out more. I don't remember briefing it, but I remember telling it to you at some point. So I think I could have reinforced that a little bit more. Like, hey, Jared, you can use these scouts, man. Because they're doing their hourly runs, and they did that on their own. But that's just, that's something on me. And I'll take the hit for that. If anybody's asking why Jared's not using the scouts, that's on me. Or we can blame Stoker. He was in charge of the scouts.
And one of the problems I had with utilizing scouts is you send them to an area and you don't know if they're going to stay there for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, unless you direct them to stay there for a certain amount of time. I should have utilized the scouts a lot more than I did. But again, it still goes back to the intel updates. Those were so crucial to everything that I was doing, and trying to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of Brent and trying to make decisions on where to go next and what to do next. So just the intel updates were so crucial. So if you had to choose between the two, I always chose intel updates.
Yeah. All right. I like this question. Brent. All right. I see that. I see what's going on. So Stoker and I have been, we've been talking nonstop since season 1. But this would be cool to go over public. So Stoker, what's one idea you might advocate for next season? Let's put him on the spot. Don't give me away any secrets though.
Without giving away any secrets. So I mean, you're right on the point, man. We chit chat damn near every day about season 2 and about season 3. And I think, as we start to continue to refine some of our thoughts, some of the things is tools and equipment. So, what else can, you and I bring, and the team bring together, really for the sake of the hunter. And if I can, I want to try to address this with some of the comments that have been flooded in. Like, the hunter has absolutely no chance of success without assistance. The area is so big. And, even a good dog team would get so tied up in the amount of time it would take to track somebody through here, especially like with Brent, as fast as he was moving. Like, there is absolutely no chance a dog team could have caught him in time. And that's if they didn't lose the scent. And you can go, like I have, and research hundreds of search and rescue operations and see how many times a dog team ended up not finding the body that they were looking for. It happens all the time. But that being said, dog teams are serious business. So what are some of the tools that we can kind of bring in? And one of those things is additional thermal tools that we've been kind of toying around with. Drones are cool, but how can we make that even cooler? Maybe we can work out a thermal drone. That'd be kind of badass. There's one.
Yeah. All right. So he won't answer me in the chat, so I'm going to ask it live. Jared, is this your birthday?
Yes, today is my birthday.
All right. Well, there you go. Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Happy birthday, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
How old are you?
25.
So Brent said in the Marines, your birthday's a beatdown. we would do pink bellies and some other stupid shit. What do you guys do in the Navy?
Yeah, same stupid shit. Pink bellies
Just-
and
but naked and with KY or
sometimes without the KY.
male blow up dolls.
Go get shellback again.
That's right. Now I turned 48 today, so I am the old man of the group.
That's cool, man. So I was putting up both of y'all's elevation gains as the hunter and the survivor, and the survivor kind of takes precedence because he's the one that's super under stress. But I think you got as the hunter, I think you got over 2,400, I want to say. Something like that. And then we'll see what your elevation gain is when you're the survivor. So that's just something I wanted to add because that's like some serious physical exertion. If Coleman Outdoors was in here, he could back that up. Like climbing through manzanitas and crawling on your belly. Like Brent was on his stomach for like half the freaking time out there and climbing up and down these hills. You know, it's a serious beating. So that goes to show when you talk about your job, what it does for your physical fitness. Because I know one dude that's 48 that's fit as hell. The other guys I know at that age, besides you, they're fucking shit bags. So good for you.
Yeah, I had some concerns about my age going into it. You know, I'm 10 years older than Brent is, or pretty close to it. And you know, but for real, in actuality, I am very physically fit with my job. The only problem with my everyday job is it's a very static physical ability. It's not like cardio or lifting weights or anything. I'm just sitting there holding a lot of weight for a long period of time in the same position and fighting with these animals, trying to keep them in that position. So at the end of that first day,
if you guys don't know what Jared does, I mean, your mind's probably wondering right now, talking about holding up animals. So tell people what you do again.
I am a farrier by trade. So I go out and I go from farm to farm and I shoe horses, not shoe. I put steel shoes on their feet. So it is a very physical job. And I've been doing that for going on 20 years now.
All right, cool. So here's a question I'm going to direct at Brent. Forcing movement during night would give Hunter a big advantage with 14s and even basic thermals. So Brent, it was just after dusk, right after nautical, whatever you call it. I forgot the word. But you're kind of coming up in the dark. I know the GoPro doesn't show the light that you actually had. How would your tactics have changed if you're that close to the extraction point and you're trying to make it in pitch black?
Oh, that would have been extremely challenging with all the vegetation out there. You know, I got to that point where, you know, it was dusk. I knew the hunter had NVGs. I didn't. So it was kind of make or break. When I committed to doing that final approach, it was like, I'm either going to make it or I'm not. Like there was no turning back. And when I started to make my final approach, like the sun was just, you know, on the horizon. And by the time I got to the point where it was like almost a straight shot to the end point, like the sun was completely down. And like you could see, it's a lot darker on a GoPro than it is on your normal vision. I could see enough to see silhouettes, right? Once I start getting towards the end point. And that's what I was talking about earlier. You know, like you were talking about people chasing me with cameras and stuff. And I didn't know who was the bad guy and who wasn't or what. So it's like, you know, people are chasing me as I'm sprinting towards the vehicle. And I think it was Stoker had a GoPro on a selfie stick or something. And he's right on my ass, you know, chasing me to get footage. But, you know, that could have been Jared for all I knew. I was running for my life. And so, yeah, I mean, it would have been extremely difficult if there was zero light out there. So, you know, once it got to dusk, it was like, hey, I need to make a run for it. I need to do this final approach, and it's either I win it or lose it right here. So
with that being said, you're from a pretty flat area, right? Mostly flat. Brent?
I mean, it's flat, but we have a lot of wooded areas also.
Okay, but no big ass mountains like what you're out there in.
Yeah, hell no.
Okay, so did you notice a difference between like just your overall ambient light, especially as it started to get dark, like the way the mountain freaking sunsets are?
I wouldn't say nothing like really jumped out at me, but it was beautiful. Like kind of seeing how the sunset and everything off in the horizon in between the mountains. So
yeah, coming from the Gulf Coast, we're at 0 and it's flat. So you see, like you mentioned, seeing silhouettes. You saw them because you were looking uphill, and there was just a tiny bit of ambient light up there. So like, on the Gulf Coast where it's flat, you see silhouettes almost everywhere if there's ambient light. But we're thinking about Jared's perspective. If he would have looked down that way, I don't know if he did, you can answer us, but Jared would not have seen your silhouette at all. Even with you moving, he may, if there was some ambient light, he may have picked up some movement, but he would not have been able to pinpoint on an actual silhouette moving. And so that's one reason we only had a couple cameras that could capture you getting up there. I could only pull the camera footage that was behind you running up, because on the other GoPros facing you downhill, you were not there. So Jared, were you looking off to your south at all when you were up there?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Randall. Me and Brent had been in reverse positions, I probably would have saw him being silhouetted. But yeah, I was looking south that whole time when I was, or southwest or whatever, but mostly south from my LPOP there. So when I started to hear Brent coming across in front of me, he was directly to my south, 20, 30 meters down there. I could not see him because I was uphill, and just the way the lighting was and everything. I could hear him plain as day down there. And me hearing him is what pretty much froze me in place there, because I knew if I moved, he was going to hear me, because I was in such thick manzanitas. They were low, but they were really thick, and just walking through them would have made so much noise. And I'm not sure. I'm kind of disappointed my camera didn't turn on or didn't get it. But the whole time Brent is walking across in front of me or making his movement across there, and I'm hearing him, I'm narrating to the camera, and obviously it didn't work because I don't think you got any footage of it. So I don't know if it was operator error or a battery issue or what, but didn't get any of that footage for you.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I had some corrupt files on your end, and I just picked up a little bit of you sitting in your OP, but that's all right. We worked it. That's kind of like doing stuff like this. Like, I freaking hate narration, and I hate talking. Seriously, I hate hearing my voice. So if you guys notice, well, the viewers, as things progress, you'll hear my stupid mouth a lot less, because you guys did really good. Like Stoker did awesome when on his run out there, just explaining your tactics and what you're actually doing, so that I don't have to do it. Because I think it's a lot better organic coming from you guys, and I don't want to talk. So pretty much that's the only time I would have to talk, is if there was a moment where you guys had camera issues, which were not too bad this time, or you just, I didn't get you saying something. But this is an interesting question. So is it high enough to thin the air out? And if so, how did it affect Jared and Brent? So Brent, you go ahead. Did you notice any effects from the air out there?
I think so. Now, in full disclosure, when I went out there, I had just recovered from like a cold. So I still had a little bit of shit in my chest, but I could tell like when I was moving, I could hear, it taking more of an effect on my body, just, knowing my physical fitness levels and stuff like that. Like, I think it played a smaller role. You got to be conditioned to operate up there, or at least you got to have some good level of physical fitness. We talked before on another live stream. I've been up to the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center multiple times up in Bridgeport, and you'll see guys that are in pretty good like shape, like they're 300 PFTers, right? They can run 3 miles in 18 minutes. Do freaking 20 pull-ups and 100 crunches and everything else, and then you get them up in Bridgeport. You throw a ruck on their back, full combat load. And we start going on, 10, 12, 20 mile freaking humps up in the mountains. And those dudes are dying. Right. So it's a different type of physical fitness and mental toughness. So, generally speaking, if you're physically fit, you can handle it. But it's a different level of physical fitness. And if you're not conditioned at, or you never experienced that type of physical fitness before, it might catch you off guard. So,
all right. Jared, before we get to your answer on that, let's go to Stoker because he's about out of time. So I just wanted we'll circle back to Jared, as our favorite White House correspondent says. We'll circle back. So, and Jared, you'll answer this next. So,
sure.
Stoker, what is Jared looking at on his next run? He's kind of seen the AO. He knows something's going to happen before he gets to get out there. So what should our next survivor be preparing for?
Throughout that first day, like you're trying to, while at the same time do your job of hunting, you're taking it in as much of what you can of the AO and the terrain about you and what you can use to your advantage. Because the tricky thing is day 2 is going to have a ton of unexpected events and scenarios and terrain, and you don't know where you're going to be in relationship. You don't even know what end state may or may not be. All you know is that you have this piece of some of the terrain and some of the major features that you've seen along the way. And so how can I try to utilize this and put it in my kit bag so that I can exploit it when it's my time to start surviving?
All right. Well, before you go, you got anything else to add?
No, just big kudos to Brent, man. You did an outstanding job from start to finish, busting through on day 1. So you definitely earned that plaque that you held up earlier, and I'm glad we both have one.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I want you to know, Stoker, in your honor, I went out and got Whataburger today, and was drinking a beer because of your taunts.
That's right. Hope your family was okay with my potty mouth.
Yeah, you're good, man. That was good stuff, man. Honestly, I think that was some of the best footage of the whole my run. Is you on that loudspeaker?
Yeah, and Jared, 100%. You did a phenomenal job. Hunting again. Like a lot of people are going to comment negatively about anybody who's trying to hunt, whatever the situation is, to have absolutely no clue about what that terrain was on day 1 and utilize your intuition to try to follow Brent and try to stay on his trail and just keep moving and keep chasing. And you were right there. You're right on him. And you did. If you had a bigger team, you would have had his ass. So you did an outstanding job, brother.
I appreciate it, man. Really do.
And on that note, when he was sitting there explaining on where he thought I was coming up from, I was like, holy fuck. I was like, how the hell did I make it in? I mean, because that was 100% spot on. So Stoker just nailed that one on the head.
Know your enemy. That's perfect psyops.
Yes, sir.
All right, Stoker. Well, thanks for coming back, man. Glad to see you're alive.
Right on. Living the fight of the comedy another day.
All right.
All right, man.
Bye, brother.
See you, Brad.
All right, so that brings it back to you, Jared. It's your turn next. You're in the spotlight. We kind of threw Brent under the bus just to make him lead from the front. So you've gotten to learn some lessons. You've gotten to see the terrain a little bit, but what are you preparing for? Like I know while you're out there, you have to be thinking about you as your survivor run. So just kind of take us through anything you've thought about ahead of time. And then after this, after Brent makes it up there, what starts to go through your mind?
So while I'm out there, I'm trying to soak in as much information about the terrain and different landmarks out there. Whether it's a landmark or not, I'm making it a landmark in my head. You know, my cardinal directions that this hillside over here is due north or south or east, west, whatever. I'm just trying to soak as much of that information in as I can, because I know I'm going to be right back out there again tomorrow or the next day, and I'm going to be twice as tired as I am now. So when we're up there at the end point, you know, I still in my head, I don't know that I'm going to get Brent or not. He has every advantage on me. He has way more skill set than I do. I was really surprised to hear him coming across the brush in front of me. And like I said before, my mistake was remaining stationary there. I should have moved out. I should not have gone into the Manzanitas as quite as far as I did. I kind of got myself blocked in there and didn't really give myself a means of egress, a stealthy egress, to get out of it if I needed to. But when I first heard him, it sounded like he was going to come out of the bushes, literally right in front of me. So that was in my head too.
All right, so I don't think this is a silly question, but as Brent makes it up there to the endpoint, so now you have a time constraint for your turn, but just the psychological effect of him getting up there and the time he did, does that affect you at all going into it for your run?
No, not at all. You know, you have to go with what you're given. If he makes it up there in 12 hours, he makes it up there in 12 hours. You just have to maintain some kind of ability to adapt to what he's doing out there. So no, that didn't matter to me. If he made it in 12 hours or 18 hours or 6 hours. So if I don't want to say too much for the following episodes, but if he made it up there in 18 hours and I made it up there in 20 hours, so be it. If he made it up there in 12 hours and it took me 10 hours or whatever, it is what it is. You can't really go off of that. You just have to deal with what you're given.
Sounds good, man. That's some serious focus right there. That's like, because now you're coming up to bat with bases loaded, 2 strikes, and you're down a couple runs. So it's cool to see. I think going into it, that'll give people your mindset, because you know we know what happens, and I've been going through these episodes working on them, and I think people will be interested to see both of y'all's different approaches as the roles switch. So that's something to look forward to. And it's been fun working on that. And then, so Brent, do you have anything to add to that as you coming in as the hunter next time? So you've seen the terrain, all that same stuff. Now you know you got to stop Jared before he beats your time. What's going through your head?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point that Jared just brought up. You know, because being the first one in the shoot, right, and going in, you know, I kind of had a tendency of like, oh, I didn't know shit, you know, I didn't know the terrain, I knew nothing really other than an azimuth, but I also, you know, didn't have the weight of, hey, I got to beat such and such time on my shoulders, right? You know, I took my time, you know, I was very like, I tried to be as stealthy as possible, Whereas now Jared's going it. He has a time, like he knows. So he might not be able to move as quietly or slow as like I did, because he has a time constraint now that he knows in his head if he wants to win this challenge, he's got to beat that time. So like, I'm glad he just brought that up, because that's not really something I was thinking about before. I was like, well, that sucks for me. You know, I didn't know shit. I had to deal with it. And the flip side of that is like, now Jared has to go into this challenge and he's got to fucking beat my time. So he, you know, he has that nervous feeling on him that, you know, if I don't move quickly, you know, I could lose this with a time constraint, even if I make it in. So that's a good point that I'm glad he brought that up. Going into this as the hunter, I don't want to get too far ahead, but you know, obviously I have that on my mind. Like, hey, you know, I got to not only prevent him from getting to the end point, but if he is going to make it to the end point, he needs to make it after my time, right? Well, shit, my time was after sun went down. So, you know, I'm gonna be playing a lot of, you know, prevent defense here and trying to keep him from A, making it to the end, but B, if he is going to make it to the end, I need to try to delay him from getting there faster than I did. So that's kind of what my thought is going into, you know, the second part of this series as the hunter.
All right, cool. So DJ, you're going to have to watch the remaining of the season to find that out. So you guys can start throwing out some final questions and we'll get to them. I saw another cool question pop up earlier. So did you learn any lessons while you were out there that you got from the mountains that you may have not gotten anywhere else? So like mountain specific doing this stuff.
I can't think of anything offhand. You know, I've played in the mountains off and on for years. I don't live in the mountains here, but they're less than an hour to the west of me. So I do go out there quite often.
Yeah, you're kind of your area seems a little similar to what I'm used to in my area in Germany. Kind of gently rolling hills and 300 to 400 foot elevation gains. So, Brent, what you got here?
We're right about 400 feet elevation here, and it's kind of very, very gently rolling. It's like an old ancient seabed, if you can imagine that. But you start going 20, 30 miles to the west. That's when the Shenandoah Mountains start. And some of the lower mountains are just 20 miles from here. And then 30, 40, 50 miles away is where the bigger mountains are, where they're 2,500, 3,000 feet, a little higher than that in places.
Yeah. All right. So Brent.
Yeah, so I brought in a picture to pull up, and that's just show you guys what Bridgeport, the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center, looks like. And it was very similar to you know, where I was at for the SERE challenge. And every time I've gone up there over the course of my, you know, 21 years in the Marine Corps, you know, they always do a you know, kind of an individual survival package in the beginning. So I'm grateful to have had that training. Definitely assisted me in this SERE challenge. So I mean, you can pull that picture down, but I don't think there's anything outside of the norm I could say that, you know, jumped out at me being up in the mountains, different than, you know, what I was expecting. But it was definitely an experience, and just to test myself, you know, that, you know, physical and mental fortitude of being out there by myself, you know, making movement, being hunted, and having that you know, stress and active enemy looking for me, and, you know, enemy op 4 taunting me with, you know, cold beer and steaks, you know, and all that stuff, and being able to make it to the end point. So just a all around great experience, great challenge, and just great test.
You know, the mountains didn't really affect me physically out there. Maybe my second day, as I was starting off as the survivor, in the very beginning, like literally in the very beginning, I had a little bit of a hard time, but I had COVID twice last year prior to coming out there, and that part affected my breathing. I remember me and a friend of mine went out to Shenandoah back in July, and it was probably the hottest day of the year. It was probably 110 degrees in the mountains, and I damn near fell out trying to ruck up the hill up there. And the very next day, I found out I had COVID. So I was out there rucking with COVID back over the summer. So and that still affected my breathing all the way up until the challenge. Then it was better, obviously, but and then also when we had left from out there, I got extremely sick from after we left the SERE challenge, and I was sick here for probably a good 2 weeks. And I don't know if it was COVID or if it was some kind of a flu thing or if it was just an exercise induced something. I don't know, but I felt like shit and couldn't breathe for about 2 weeks after I got back from out there.
I wonder if it was those dogs we made you eat while in.
It could have been.
Captivity.
It could have been that dog meat.
Get some cholera or dysentery.
China.
And China.
China dog.
I did see some Baroons coming over while we were out there. Thought it was takeout. The one time
Well,
takeout.
Those are the ones that came in that weren't detected by some random little old lady civilian. Those are the ones that slipped past NORAD somehow.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up, guys. So, just a reminder, Brent was awake for about 35 hours. So he didn't really get to sleep in captivity. If he did, it was frozen, miserable sleep on the cold ground. Lots of elevation gain, a little over 2.5 miles covered, which, if you've been in the woods and in the mountains, you know how tough that is. So I don't have to beat that one up. So next Sunday, we're going to do the same time again, 1900 Central America time. That'll be episode 6, where Jared, we're gonna bring it on and throw Jared onto the bus. So anybody got any final words? Brent?
Jared, I'm coming for you.
Jared?
I'm not even gonna try to talk shit at this point. So no, it was awesome. Hopefully I gave you a run for your money, Brent. I think I was on your ass pretty much all day. I don't know if you knew it or felt it or whatnot, but I think we just had a blast out there and fostered some great friendships, and I think it was just an awesome event that we did.
Yeah, just again, in all seriousness, like seeing that final episode, and like, you're sitting there and like, I think he's going to approach from this direction, blah blah blah, and just the fact that I made it through there is just mind blowing. So good on you, man. Good tactics.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. All right. So it's going to get heated up all over again next week. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And then, of course, there will be more live talks. And, we'll keep this thing going. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
Sweet.